There was hardly anyone on the train as it moved through the countryside. The snow-covered land slipped smoothly by. Way out there, I could see a lonely farmhouse now and again just turning on their lights against the cold oncoming night. Two thick-coated horses in the almost dark steam out of their nostrils eating hay, and then they were gone. The sky was quickly dark, and the stars were crisp in the chill air. It wasn't very warm on the train. There was a man sleeping at one end, his jacket rolled up for a pillow. Christmas present had dropped to the floor. A few seats away sat a young woman, holding her baby. She was staring out the window. She saw me looking at her, reflected in the window, and half smiled at the reflection, then stared beyond that to where the cold, dark land was slipping away. I turned and looked out my window. Then I heard a very soft, "Oh." And I turned just in time to see the young woman hold her baby to her very closely and very intensely. And suddenly I felt very close and warm, and a door appeared in the back of my mind, and I opened it, and light flooded in, and I heard my father say, "Brrr, whoa, it is chilly willy outside. You can just put those logs right by the fireplace." And as I quickly stepped in, he closed the door behind me, and I was standing in my living room. The brightly lit tree was over by the front window. I could hear laughter coming from upstairs. My mother came through the swinging kitchen door carrying a plate of red and green frosted cookies. And behind her came the smell of roasting turkey like a gauze that wrapped around my head like the smell of earth that hangs out over the ocean and lets you know that home is just over the horizon. I heard someone stamping snow off their boots on the back porch, and my little sister and two of our cousins were lying in front of the tree staring at the presents like sharks staring at a man's legs dangling underwater. I set down the logs and took off my mittens to warm my frozen fingers. In the dining room, my grandma was scolding my grandpa about the best way to crack the walnuts that he was already cracking. He looked at me for a second and shrugged his shoulders and went back to cracking the walnuts. I took off my thick coat, threw it on the floor by the door, and went over to stand by my aunt, who had called me over to the piano to sing tenor. There was laughter and loud talk coming from the kitchen where the windows were steamed. We were singing carols, usually not remembering the second verse, but sounding pretty good. When suddenly, in the midst of all these warm and familiar sounds, I heard someone very softly crying. I looked around to try to locate the person, and my eyes finally fell on the young woman in the train holding her baby. Her eyes with tears, she could hardly see the back of the seat in front of her. I walked awkwardly up the aisle to where she sat. I took off my thick coat and put it around her shoulders. And I sat down next to her. I took one of her hands in both of mine and held it. And we rode like that, not looking at each other, but rather looking straight ahead. And I heard her whisper under her breath, "Merry Christmas." And the train slipped away across the frozen land into the dark and winter night.